Dan, how does this ongoing U.S. government shutdown highlights the vulnerabilities in U.S. air traffic control and transport infrastructure? How should the federal government balance budgetary disputes while ensuring such public safety and working conditions for essential services?
There's not that much they can do. Air traffic controllers are deemed essential services, and therefore they cannot officially strike, and they have to go on without pay. This is the longest government shutdown in the history of the U.S., 36 days, I believe, and it shows no signs necessarily of ending anytime soon because of the nature of the incredibly partisan and ruthless dispute between the Republicans and the Democrats. The air traffic control issue in the U.S. is a long and painful one. In 1981, they attempted to strike for better conditions, and Reagan fired almost all of them, about 12,000 air traffic controllers, and the result was flight disruptions in the U.S. for, 5 years at least, and possibly in some ways a decade, while they retrained a whole new generation and used retired ones and military ones. People old enough still remember that. This is just one avatar of a bigger problem in the U.S. with the fact that you can even have this shutdown. And this attaches to something very bizarre in America, which is that to pass significant legislation, and that is what the appropriations bill that is meant to essentially implement the budget passed a few months ago, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, has to be passed by a supermajority in the Senate of 60 seats, and the Republicans only have 53. Now, I can think of no other country where no developed democracy, at least, where this happens. Generally, if you have a majority in the central main parliament, you can pass the budget. And if you don't pass the budget, then it runs at the run rate of the previous year. In America, funding stops, not for everything, but for a significant subsection of the government, and that includes the air traffic controllers, some of them, even though these are, as I said, deemed essential services. It is craziness that this can happen. It's very interesting that the Republicans are rejecting Trump's call to abolish the filibuster, which is a mechanism, this antiquated and quite remarkably exceptional mechanism that requires the supermajority. A simple majority can eliminate it. And the Republicans aren't doing this because they fear that would allow the Democrats to do whatever they might want next time the Democrats have a majority. The result is total government dysfunction. And I'm not sure there's a way to fix the problem with affected services without getting at the root of it, which is basically the filibuster. Now, the one last thing, the Republicans are blaming the Democrats for not providing them sufficient votes at 7 or 8 to pass their budget, or the implementation of the budget, the appropriations bill. And so Trump is running around saying it's a Democrats' fault, the Democratic far left, woke left, is causing all this to happen, which is causing food stamp benefits, for example, to be suspended. And in a sense, formally, that's true. If the Democrats had provided these additional votes, then there would be a supermajority for the budget. But that is a little bit ridiculous because the Democrats don't want to support this budget, which they consider to be a complete abomination. A case of stealing from the poor to pay for the rich. This under the big, beautiful bill, the average family earning almost $1 million would get tax breaks of almost $70,000. Meanwhile, billions in entitlements in healthcare and nutrition care for poor people, and tax breaks for poor people are expiring. I mean, it's hard to defend the big, beautiful bill, and therefore it's, nothing short of ugly in its level of popularity among the American people. I don't see how you get the Democrats to vote for that. And so we're at an impasse, and who knows, maybe some compromise will be arrived at. Inevitably, something eventually will, but with Trump in place, he's clearly goading the Republicans to give no quarter. And the result is, as I say, the longest ever government shutdown, and now this disruption to air traffic in the U.S.
Yes, Dan, building on your answer, what do you think this how is this affecting, the shutdown affecting the public confidence in the U.S. government's ability to manage critical infrastructure? And also, as you mentioned, this not in any developed democracy you've seen such things. So do you think they need to change something fundamentally?
Oh my God, yeah. I think the U.S. is full of exceptionalisms that are very, very bad, from the electoral college to using the non-metric system. And as I say, Trump is right. For once, even a broken clock twice a day is right. When he says abolish the filibuster, there's got to be a better way. The result is government dysfunction. And of course, to your question, it is devastating to the public's confidence in the government. A recent poll that came out just yesterday was shocking, showing that just over 30% trust the federal government. 52% consider Trump to be a dangerous dictator. And by the way, there's not that much more support for the Democratic Party either. There is grave American cynicism about their entire political class, and that is why you end up seeing populists from radical parts of the political wilderness end up in positions of power. Trump himself is that. 20 years ago, he already had somewhat hinted at political aspirations, and it was a joke that was referenced on The Simpsons. Now he's actually president as a reflection of the public sympathy to the idea that you just have to burn down the house, which is what he's doing, not only with the U.S. System and institutions, but the entire post-World War II liberal world order. He's taking a massive axe to it, if not a blowtorch. And this is done, enabled, his political victories are enabled by the fact that the public is indeed despondent. I don't think they've chosen wisely. He's burning down the wrong houses. But we saw it again in New York with Mamdani. Different problem with cost of living in an enormous world city, but it's of a piece. It's quite related to the general sense of despair about things as they have been and the status quo, and a feeling that something is desperately wrong and needs to change.
Yes. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate you sharing, connecting everything with your extensive knowledge and impressive knowledge. Thank you. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Dan, could this focus on certain offenses or political activities for visa revocations create perceptions of bias or selective enforcement by current government?
Oh, I very much think it not only could create that impression, but definitely has created that impression. But this is a tremendously complex issue because you have certain political forces in the US and in Europe that believe that it is automatically racism to defend your borders, but the vast majority of the public doesn't think that. And it doesn't think that not just because of economic issues, but because of desire to not dilute too much the culture of a given country. And of course, others will say that to feel like you don't want to dilute your culture is racism. But the majority of the public doesn't feel this. So immigration is unpopular, both in Western Europe and in North America, where they sense that immigration is not some principle that everyone is being asked to accept, but it's a one-way street from the developing world to the developed world, which is understandable on economic grounds, but they don't feel that they don't necessarily need to allow it. So that's the political baseline. Now, with Trump, I mean, you know, he's on record as hating immigration, whether it's from Latin America that has been the main boogeyman, but also from the Muslim world. He banned immigration from a host of Muslim countries during his first term, but notably not Saudi Arabia, right? Which he needs for economic reasons. And the same applies to Africa. In the case of South Sudan, the premise is basically false. The war in South Sudan that created the legitimacy for these asylum requests has abated somewhat, but is not over. 300,000 people have been displaced so far in 2025 alone. So it's a little bit premature to suddenly yank all these visas because of that premise. But two things apply. One, Trump is eager to claim, even if it's premature, a victory in, you know, ending wars all over the world, and he's made this claim, as you well know, with India and Pakistan. In the case of Africa as well, in Central Africa. And in South Sudan, this enables them to message that their fantastically sophisticated diplomacy has ended that war, whereas in fact, it really has not. The other thing is, as I alluded to before, a somewhat racist dog whistle to the white nationalist base that cannot help but be pleased at the elimination of the source of unwanted immigration from the underdeveloped part of the world.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dan Perry for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much.